Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And speed, sound, action. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. How are you today? I hope you're well and secure. I just had a conversation with my mother this morning. She's going to be 87 this year. And we always end up talking about the state of the world and politics and economics. And, you know, we're both French Canadian, so we talk with the hands and we're expressive and we get upset. Oh, and I'll tell you what, I am so thankful that I have a mandala, that I have this practice, a nice altar. I swear, if it weren't for this practice, I just don't know. Some days, right? It's amazing. It's important that we remember the aspects of our lives that are quite fortunate. I mean, not always that it's always that we can justify our lives by measuring the misery in other places or possibilities. That's a very Catholic thing. I'm sure some of you will relate to that. But sincerely, the security, the integrity, the inner life that I grow and feel in my day-to-day life is so much expanded, so much present, strictly because of this practice. Without this practice as my foundation, there's always sort of a vacuum or a hole that seems to require filling. And unfortunately, in the human condition, when we feel that there's a hole in us that requires filling, we don't care a whole lot about filling it up as long as it gets filled up. And that's where a lot of our terrible, my nose is itching today, our least dignified behavior comes in, I think. Dignity, there's something that we don't talk about much anymore. But not dignity as far as ego or pride, but dignity of our human potential, right? And this is where this Buddhist practice, this Lotus Sutra practice, with the guidance of Nichiren and other scholars, really builds that. I think that's where the void is, where the hole is in our day-to-day existence, is a sense of feeling like we're manifesting our best potential, our maximal potential, as I often say, right? Not just our animal potential. Makes the days really boring just having that to go through. Anyway, just an aside, just a little drift there as we get back to a treatise on protecting the nation. So let's see how Nichiren continues to develop this thematic that he's got us going down here. In the next paragraph, that's weird. So the last paragraph we finished was about those difficult to save ignorant people, such as I hate that word. What did I come up with? Anyway, people with persistent errors of views, worldviews, of the five rebellious errors of perception. Slanderers of the true Dharma, or Ichantika of the latter age, who are thinking only about what they're going to have next and are constantly drowned in the sea of life and death. Those people that see this life as existing solely to suffer and be miserable through it, in the hopes that when we get out of this life, we'll then have access to this glorious place. It's such a it's such a delusion. It's hard to say it without shaking your head, really, when you see it, right? If you don't understand or you don't see how deluded that is, then, well, you don't see it, right? You're ignorant. So he continues, I divide this chapter into 3 sections. In the first, I shall explain how lay believers can escape from the sufferings of life, death, by upholding the true Dharma, but will fall into the 3 evil realms of hell, hunger, and animality if they believe in evil dharmas. In the second, I shall expound how the ignorant lay believers can be saved from or rescued from the 3 evil paths or realms or worlds only by chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And in the third, I shall explain how the purpose of the Nirvana Sutra is the amplification of the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra was his final teaching, the culminating teaching of all of his years of instruction for others to develop and understand to the point where they could get the Lotus Sutra, the self-practice that would set them on their own path. So it didn't require someone tugging us along to do for ourselves our invocation of Buddha in our minds. And then, as he laid down to extinction, of course, out of the woodwork come all of these followers who'd been practicing his teachings from near and far, with that final question, what are we going to do when you're gone? Suddenly everybody panics. How are we going to continue if you're not here? See, they've made the mistake of deifying him. And this is all the more reason why it's natural that that he's extinguished, that his life comes to an end, his mortal life comes to an end. Because he is not Buddha. He realized Buddha, and so can all of we. But this attachment, human deification attachment, it's just that hard to get rid of. That even with all of his teachings, these people were still coming out. What are we going to do when you're gone? Well, the Nirvana basically says, just keep doing what you've been doing. Self-practice. Do the same that I did. Attain Buddha. I'm not Buddha. Buddha is Buddha. It's a mind state. It's a perceptive state. It's an awareness, a clarity. It doesn't exist in this body because the mind is an emergent thing from this apparatus of body. Right? Buddhism is constantly talking about the 3 bodies of Buddha. Why? Because it's trying to get the human mind to perceive of itself as more than just these constituent parts. We're not physical. We are physical manifestations of, right, over and over again, all this energy, this momentum, this life, death, life, death, life, death. But when you start to talk about the 3,000 realms in a single moment, when you start to talk about the mind with Buddha clarity in it, you're not talking about this body anymore. You're talking about the body of the mind, and it encompasses the entire universe. And that, realizing that, is the Dharma body. realizing that that exists emergent from this carnal form, that's the reward body. And this carnal form that exists solely for the purpose of manifesting, emerging a mind, that's our manifest body. It's talked about in 3 different ways to try to get people out of this. This isn't the primary mode of existence. It's in the mind. Right? We know this intrinsically, but samsara romances our physicalness constantly. And so we get stuck there instead of perceiving the bigger picture. So, section 1, upholding the true Dharma by lay believers. That's you and I. First of all, I would like to state that lay believers will be able to escape the sufferings of life-death if they uphold the true Dharma, but will fall into the 3 evil realms if they believe in evil dharmas. So, again, he's making the distinction between all of Buddhist teachings and specifically the ultimate, the culminating teaching, Lotus Sutra. So he's not dissing all religions of the world. That's not even in the realm of discussion when we're talking about Buddhism, because Buddhism isn't one of those. And if you look at Buddhism like it's one of those, just another world religion, you've missed it. You're not practicing the true Dharma. That's what he's saying here. The Nirvana Sutra, Facile 3, declares, quote, answering Kashyapa's question, the Buddha preached that it was due to his upholding the true Dharma in previous lives that he gained a body like an eternal, indestructible piece of diamond, end quote. Now, what does that mean, previous lives? He's still teaching to the people of his day, 3,000 years ago, that still can't seem to let go of this reincarnation stupidity. It is not Buddhism. So, by rereading and studying all of Buddhism, we come to find that even though he's using that rhetoric, or this English translation is using that rhetoric, he's not talking about a previous to being born in this world, I lived another life. He's talking about this life, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. Birth, arising, your entire selfhood, which is manifest of this apparatus, transferring moment to moment that information, that's the momentum, and manifesting it, although in every single moment there's a slight evolution, a slight change, a slight influence. And that's what a lifetime is, a group of uncountable, numerous, innumerable moments of life, death, life, death, life, death. So what do we do between those moments when a life is existing and perishing only to be reinstantiated with the information gained from the previous moment? I exist now. What direction am I giving that momentum? That's how a life exists. So if you study incorrectly, then those influential moments will lead you toward either the 3 lower worlds, right? Getting more and more sunk deeply into the physicality of life. Or will you start to release little tiny bits more and more of that dogmatic, lower, attached world and start moving up? If up is better, moving toward enlightenment, education, realization, right? Bodhisattva, and finally enlightenment. It's going to take effort to keep driving that boat of your life, your momentum, towards it. So you should have as your focus the ultimate Dharma, right? The true Dharma. It continues, quote, "Once there was a king called Virtuous, Utoku, defending the true Dharma. The king engaged in fierce battles against evil monks who violated Buddhist precepts." So on and so forth. Mortally wounded, King Virtuous greatly rejoiced to hear monk virtue consciousness. Kakutoku preached the Dharma. Upon death, he was reborn in the land of immovable Akshobhya Buddha to the east. End quote. According to the passage, lay followers of Buddhism without special wisdom or training can liberate themselves from sufferings of life and death if they chastise slanderers of the true Dharma. So again, life, death, life, death, life. At the moment of losing his life, mortally wounded, he immediately penetrated through all the 10 realms and realized Buddhahood. That's not to say he went someplace else. That once his body, mortal body, died, he then went to. That's not what it says. It says in those final moments, as he heard the true teachings and embraced them, took them in, and experienced them for himself, he then instantiated his Buddha-ness, right? Unfortunately, he didn't get to course through the world as a bodhisattva doing it, but he still attained it. Question: how should lay followers of Buddhism uphold the Dharma? Answer: it is stated in the Nirvana Sutra. Once again, Nietzsche says, look, this ain't me. I'm just pointing you to the correct answers from Shakyamuni's very teachings. If you don't know this, then you haven't been following the true Dharma. Plain and simple. But here it is. To those who desire to have property, I would first give it to them, and then encourage them to read this Sutra of the Great Nirvana, so on and so forth. To those aristocratic people, I would first please them with gentle words, and gradually encourage them to read this Mahayana Sutra of the Great Nirvana. To those ignorant people, I would force them to read this sutra. Force? Probably highly encourage them. Force? Again, these translation biases, they can be obstacles, right? To those self-conceited people, I would serve them as a servant, catering to and flattering them before trying to teach and guide them with the Sutra of the Great Nirvana. If there are those who slander Mahayana Sutras, I would compel them to admit their error, encourage them to read the Sutra of the Great Nirvana. To those who believe in Mahayana Sutras, I would personally visit and pay my respects, give offerings, revere, and praise them. People ask all the time about how do I propagate this to others. Here, Nietzsche breaks it down by economic class, political class. That's quite wise, don't you think? Because not everybody hears things the same way. They hear it through their momentum, their set of lenses. Very sage advice. Followed by another question. As people today, both clergy and laypersons, having attached themselves solely to the collection of passages on the Nembutsu, right? Lots of Nembutsu in the time, believe the Lotus Nirvana Sutras to be unsuitable for them because they're either childish play or far too intellectual. You hear that a lot, especially from Nembutsu. Oh, those are for just special people. 1 in 10 or 10 in 100 will attain Buddhahood through those teachings. They're too difficult, right? They have no intention of saving these sutras from extinction by helping to promote them. Now, there's that onus we hear about all the time, the fear of losing the great teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, the fear of losing the Lotus Sutra. They have no intention of saving these sutras from extinction by helping to promote them. There it is. If someone happens to speak up against the erroneous doctrine of the collection of passages on the Nembutsu, they will accuse him of slandering the Nembutsu. Yeah, for good reason. It's really the other way around. All over the country, what do you think of such people? In other words, would you call them Ichantika? Answer: this is too grave a question for me to answer in my own words. There it is again, Nichiren saying, don't take my word for it, but here the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni, speaks about such people in the Sutra of the Benevolent King. And then he quotes a couple of paragraphs from that sutra. So here we go. Great King, after my death, those who would believe and protect the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Buddhist order, the Sangha, monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen followers, and the king, crown prince, and princes of the various petty kingdoms, will instead destroy them. They are no different than parasites in the intestines of a lion eating it up. Those who destroy Buddhism are not usually non-Buddhists. They are mostly Buddhists eradicating their own Buddhist Dharma, committing a terrible error. Right? As the true Dharma declines, virtuous conduct disappears, with evil multiplying. Don't we see that in the world today? That's why when people tell me about how some organizations are growing all over the world, then how is it possible that dignity, self-respect, behavior that's befitting a human being, not warring, not so much violence, everywhere violence. How could that be happening if the Lotus Sutra, the true Dharma, were actually being correctly promoted? That should be lessening. That's what makes yours and my mission so important. We have to do this right so that we can push away those erroneous interpretations. Those are not the true Dharma. So here he is talking about it. As the true Dharma declines, virtuous conduct disappears with evil multiplying, and the lifespan of people shortening day by day, so none will live more than 100 years. People will eradicate Buddhism with filial children, while filial children will vanish, with quarrels prevailing in families, but divine help will not be forthcoming. Instead, epidemics will spread. Evils and devils will threaten people day after day. Look at Yemen. Look at anywhere in the world today. Calamities will occur consecutively, one after another. And upon death, people will fall into the hell and to the realm of hungry spirits and that of beasts and birds. This is what my mother and I end up talking about every time we talk. Nichiren continues, following this, the sutra also states, quote, Great King, kings of petty kingdoms, monks, nuns, lay Buddhists, both men and women in the future, will commit this desperate error of mistakenly believing in erroneous Dharma, causing their kingdoms to perish, so on and so forth. For the sake of their honor and profit, many wicked monks will preach false Dharma to the king, crown prince and princes, causing destruction of Buddhism and downfall of the kingdom. When the king, unable to distinguish the true from the false, believes and listens to their words, so on and so forth, the true Dharma will soon be eradicated. Looking at the collection of passages on the Nembutsu, I, Nichiren, see that this prediction made in the Sutra of the Benevolent King has turned out to all be true. The collection of passages of the Nembutsu defines the true dharmas of the Lotus Shingon Sutras as miscellaneous and difficult to practice, unsuitable for us in the latter age, in terms of both time and capacity of comprehension, insisting that not even 1 out of 1,000 of those who practice them will be able to be reborn in the Pure Land. Despite the fact that the Buddha preached such sutras as the Lotus last, invalidating expedient sutras, Genku closes the gate to the Lotus Shingon teachings, leaving open the sole gate to the Nembutsu. Branding practitioners of the Lotus Shingon's teachings in the latter age as bandits, Genku converts people today, clergy and laity, all to his collection of passages on the Nembutsu, convincing them that it represents the true words of the Buddha. As a result, people today, both clergy and laity, no longer aspire to promote Buddhism. The fountainhead of the Lotus Shingon True Dharma will soon dry up, and the gods and upright deities decrease in number, while evil in the 3 evil realms multiplies daily. This is solely due to the false teaching of the collection of the passages on the Nembutsu. The term, quote, after my extinction, end quote, among the words of the Buddha in the Sutra of the Benevolent King, cited above, means that the last 80 years in the age of the true Dharma, the last 800 years in the age of the semblance Dharma, and the last 8,000 years in the latter age of degeneration, the age that you and I are in, the collection of passages on the Nembutsu was published toward the end of the age of the semblance Dharma, in the beginning of the latter age of degeneration, namely within the last 800 years in the age of the semblance Dharma. It was exactly the time predicted in the Sutra of the Benevolent Kings. The king of various petty kingdom means the king of Japan. It is said in the Sutra of the Benevolent King that those who had practiced the 10 virtuous acts in the past lives with a mediocre or inferior mind would be born kings of petty states as tiny as scattered grains of millet. Quote, intestinal parasites in a lion, end quote, refers to Genku, a disciple of the Buddha. Many evil monks means disciples of Genku, preaching false dharma, causing the destruction of Buddhism and the downfall of kingdoms, is in reference to the collection of passages on the Nembutsu cited above. The king, quote, the king, unable to distinguish the true from the false, believes and listens to their words, end quote, refers to Buddhist clergy and lay followers today, unable to tell virtue from iniquity, indiscriminately believing in the wicked dharmas. May the people, both clergy and lay persons, carefully distinguish the true from the false, put their conviction in the true Dharma, and meditate for peace in the next life. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. Move away from the lower realms, the lower worlds of samsaric being, and use this apparatus to enlighten the mind, the emergent property of Buddha in your mind. It is hard to be born a human. Hard in the sense that it's a tiny, tiny percentage of all manifested phenomena in the universe. So it's not hard in the sense that it's physical work. It's hard in the sense of the physical work of energy that combine in very specific ways to culminate in the instantiation of a human. It's unfathomable, would be a better word than hard, right? But unless the human listens to the true Dharma, he will lose the chance to be reborn in the human realm, falling into the three evil realms, hell, hunger, and animality, and then it will be too late to fix it. If all of this unknowable, incredibly complex energies manifest this human form, being, out of all the particles and energies and planets and suns and so on and so forth, everything, gases, anything physical in this entire universe, you can't even wrap your mind around how vast that is, what kind of numbers we're talking about, right? If all you do is just live out that manifestation in the physical realm, then you've lost your opportunity to attain enlightenment. You've lost your opportunity to feel, emotive, appreciate, be stunned by the very nature of life. That experience of amazement and appreciation and love for others in your situation, humans that is, and every blade of grass on the planet is so magnificent. That sensation, that knowing, well, you let it pass right by you. You were just like another animal on the planet, adhering to physical property, relationships, completely self-involved. Self being your human manifestation. And because of that, war, violence, competition, right? Because it's all about mine, 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 yours, yours, yours. And that's your existence. Bye-bye. You failed to realize how amazing this opportunity is. You failed to even find the teaching that would show you how to instantiate that incredible mind. You just went along like another cat or dog or bird in the night, never realizing what you're missing. Then how difficult is it to encounter the teaching, right? We've gone over this. The difficulty of being a human, and then the difficulty of understanding that as a human with an emergent mind, that mind can be opened, trained to open, and realize a huge, dynamic, constantly moving reality of life. Life expressed, manifested, rather than owned or fear of losing. What a mind state. What an opportunity. You only get it in this life. Section 2, the Daimoku, the way out of the three evil realms. Should we make that another? Yeah, let's I'm keeping these in a little bit shorter chunks because there's so much to digest in each step. But please understand, I'm sure you do by now, that every one of these steps, though it's quite comprehensive, isn't in itself the only thing to understand. It constantly builds, right? And this whole treatise that Nichiren wrote is a building, just like the life of Shakyamuni. This is building concept on concept on concept for the purposes of penetrating the minds of those who are obviously cut off and showing them with reason, with actual quotes from the teachings themselves, teachings that they are trained to miss by evil teachers. If you get this right, you too can do as Shakyamuni did right now. It's an interesting Gosho, don't you think? be patient. The next one will go into how the Daimoku works. A lot of you have asked questions about that, and I have videos answering that, but let's see how he approaches this question in the treatise on protecting the nation, right? In the meantime, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to my patrons. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps us get this Sangha to grow on YouTube and to touch more people's lives. When they do searches, we're more likely to come up, so they have the opportunity, right, to study with us. So yeah, it's no small thing to like and subscribe, especially. And if it's useful, share it. Or download the audio podcast and share those, right? You can hang on to those and go back, and you can make a whole library for yourself. Goshos and Nagarjuna and all the different playlists, right? Use the search criteria. Make yourself some groups of teachings. I'm sorry, Birdie, you can't come through the glass. Oh, he wants to come through so bad. I'd like for you to come in here too. It's funny when I chant in the morning. Oh, somebody asked me why I wear these beads. It's not so much that I wear them. That implies that I walk around all day long with these beads on me. It's just that when I'm done chanting or doing Gongyo, and then I turn here to talk on Gosho or whatever, on Buddhism, it's just natural for me to I keep that infinity twist in them, and I hang them onto my neck or over my head, because I feel like I'm holding on to all the Daimoku I've put into these beads, and I'm hoping that they help me be a little bit more eloquent when I'm talking to you. So it's part of my practice to be here and have this discussion. The beads are just with me. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. Don't forget, there's no excuse not to have a mandala. They're not expensive. You can get them at my cafepress.com/Gohanzen store. I have plenty of books. The Big Book of Buddhism has a complete enshrinement description how to do that, or you can get it for free from threefoldlotus.com, just that chapter on enshrinement in the altar, how to set it up. It's a PDF. You can read it online or print it out. Just as many resources as I can create to help us study and keep our practice strong. Okay? And with that, I will see you in the next one. We'll learn more about Daimoku and how that works. And that's it for now. I'll see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.